Hey guys, it's Malcolm here with another episode of Prophecy's MDM Bytes. These are short videos to talk about tips, tricks, best practices, everything you want to know about MDM, data strategy, and data governance. Let's talk today about the data mesh. I've had a few other posts about the data mesh. It's still very, very popular and for very good reason. There's a lot to like about the data mesh. I'm a believer for some use cases. But there are things to be concerned about as well. We're going to talk about those top 3 things to be concerned about today when it comes to a data mesh. Number 1, it is only an analytical paradigm. Anybody that tells you that the data mesh, at least as defined by the book titled The Data Mesh, anybody that tries to tell you that it's an operational paradigm or that it supports operational use cases of data is incorrect. The data mesh is an analytical paradigm. It was designed to address shortcomings, pitfalls, limitations. Better word probably is frustration. That's the actual word that Zhamak uses. Frustration related to kind of centralized data management patterns, frustrations with not being able to get analytics and reports from IT organizations. This is all about analytics and allowing highly decentralized approaches to analytical requirements, analytical needs. So it's an analytical model. Yes, it's socio-technical, but the output here is supposed to be analytical in nature. The use cases supported are analytical in nature. That's kind of concern number 1, right? So if you're thinking about ways to better manage operational data, the data that is maybe your customer data as it's being consumed in a CRM or an ERP or any other business application, it's not what the data mesh is designed for. It's not designed to allow for decentralization and management of that data. It is created to allow for the consumption, increased efficiencies around the consumption of analytical uses of data. That's it. So concern number 2, it's really complicated. Zhamak herself would recognize this and has said this many times, is that it is still fairly young in its maturity. And there's a lot of complications there that today are not really kind of well supported by a lot of the technology solutions in the space, particularly when we get into cross-functional uses of data, data that traverses multiple domains, on and on. It's rather complicated to successfully execute. I'm not going to go into the details of why there's a lot of complication there, but there is, particularly when it comes to multi-domain, cross-functional uses of data. There are most certainly complications there. That's kind of concern number 3 for me, is that it's really, I would argue, not much of a governance paradigm, right? It's not. It's, again, an analytical paradigm. And there are a lot of questions here when it comes to cross-functional data sharing, the governance rules that would be used to enable analytics to flow across functions, across departments, that horizontally, but also up, right? Analytics that need to flow up from a department use of data to an enterprise-wide use of data. The quintessential question that your CEO is going to ask is, how many customers do we have? And if everybody has a different answer for that within these cross-functional units, which they may under a data mesh paradigm, which is totally fine and reasonable from a mesh paradigm, but if the answers are all different, you still need to find a way to resolve those answers. And the data mesh really doesn't do a good job of speaking to that, in my opinion. The last kind of concern here is really that all of these things together mean, at least to me, that the data mesh is not really an enterprise-wide data management architecture. It's not. It's good. It's really, really good at some things, but if I'm thinking about a data management architecture, right, and the boxes that need to be checked in order to be considered enterprise-wide architecture, it would need to support all use cases of data, not just analytical uses, but operational uses of data as well. It would need to be, it doesn't necessarily need to be simple, but at the very least it needs to be explainable, and it needs to support both decentralized uses of data and centralized uses of data. And if it can't do that effectively, or if there's a lot of technical oversight or difficulty that needs to be kind of overlaid on the core operating model to do that, well, then it's really kind of not much of an enterprise-wide data management solution. Thirdly, governance. I mean, there needs to be an answer here for governance at both a centralized level and a decentralized level. So if you go all in on being decentralized, hey, that's great. Maybe that is the operating model of your business. Maybe that approach well aligns to the operating model of your business. The great example here is like a Berkshire Hathaway. That's more of a holding company that is highly decentralized, and it allows individual business units or individual functions within those business units to operate in a very, very autonomous way. Then the data meshes get really well aligned to that, and that's fantastic, but that's just not the reality for most companies. The reality for most companies is that it needs both some level of centralization and some level of decentralization, a little bit of both. And really, the mesh has just kind of gone all in on decentralization. And like I said, there's a lot of things to like. I like the data kind of product approach. I like decentralization, right? I like business units to have more autonomy over the creation and management of their analytics, but at least insofar as an enterprise-wide data management architecture, I don't think it's designed for that, and I think it's ill-suited for it. It's really kind of not. There's concerns about the complicated nature of enabling cross-functional use cases here, the complicated nature of enabling cross-functional data governance. A lot of things to be concerned about here. So yes, the mesh is still relatively well hyped. It's rather popular. A lot of companies are evaluating this, and rightfully so. I'm not saying don't evaluate it. I'm just saying go in eyes wide open and know that there are some concerns here. And if your business operating model, if the strategy of your company is a combination, a hybrid of both highly decentralized but highly centralized to a certain degree for certain use cases, these things can coexist. These things can be true at the same time. You can have decentralized operating patterns, but centralized operating patterns. It really depends on the use case. Maybe you allow your marketing organization a lot of flexibility, but your supply chain, your manufacturing organization has less flexibility. This is common in today's business environment. So it's not an all or nothing. And if you're evaluating a data mesh, these things you need to be aware of. It may not necessarily always be the best fit for your organization. So those are my concerns about a data mesh. I hope you found this video useful and that you will look to other MDM Bytes videos or any other content that we create. We're creating podcasts. We've got kind of how-to videos. We've got blogs. I'm out on LinkedIn every day, guys. So if you're looking for answers on other questions, chances are pretty good we've got them. Thanks for checking us out. We'll talk to you again sometime.